Hi everyone, and welcome to this first video of 2023, where I'd like to share with you how Tony J. Selimi's unconventional healing transformation process is the solution to the many mental health illnesses you may have been led to believe are chronic in their nature and are greatly disaffecting you in many areas of life. Suppose you've been diagnosed with an incurable mental health illness and told it's chronic. In that case, you may recognise how utterly devastating going through such an experience can be for your short and long-term mental health and your entire life. And for you, it could be those years, even decades after that initial diagnosis, the trauma of that moment may still feel as fresh as it did on that day. And perhaps from that day on, you've been left feeling that your life has just ebbed away. But have the knock-on effects of such a diagnosis had far more reaching impacts that have affected every aspect of your life. Yet to others you feel they are most likely still going unseen, especially with so many afraid to reveal how it's genuinely left them feeling. Perhaps you think it's left you living with a broken mind or a tortured soul, and that this is it and will be for the rest of your life. Or it could be that you feel cold because of it all, and this coldness shows in how you treat yourself and others, as the pain from such a diagnosis have enormously impacted your every relationship. And if you're suffering in silence, are you feeling that you are the only one going through this experience? Or, like me, you've experienced this since being a teenager, and you've struggled through the years with gaining any solid comprehension of how this happened or came to be. It could be that you've even tried to explain all this to someone, but this has left you feeling even more lost because nobody understands you, or you feel that they don't understand. To look at it from the perspective of a parent of a child who's had such a diagnosis, perhaps you feel that the son and daughter who was once happy and loving have faded into a shadow of their former selves over the months and years, leaving you feeling you've lost all intimacy with them, and the illness has placed a distance between you both. Or, as was the case with my parents, you've had to watch them spiral into a hopeless addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, or both. And what is an attempt for them to ease their pain, even if for a short while. Although their attempts to block out their pain are sure to be causing you immense suffering, as you watch someone you love suffering, day after day from a tortured soul and mind, something you may not have considered is that in their tortured state, they most likely don't know the impacts their behaviour is truly having on your life, as they're just trying to survive every hour of their day spent battling with their thoughts, emotions, and perhaps often frequent suicidal thoughts, knowing that they'll most likely be judged, mocked, or ridiculed if they were ever to reveal to the world how tortured they are. Diagnosis is one thing, but the way and attitudes of our society towards mental health contribute significantly to the prolonged suffering. One reason why merely raising awareness of where to direct someone suffering from poor mental health is a step, but not the answer to solving this localised and global issue. At this point, you may ask how I, a relatively quiet, unassuming person, would know all this. Because this was once me. By my early 20s, I'd been diagnosed with several incurable illnesses and was led to believe they were all chronic in their nature. OCD, epilepsy and depression are only 3. But in truth, unbeknownst to me, I was suffering from close to another 40 mental health illnesses simultaneously during these times. During these times spent within the NHS mental health system from age 17 to approx 38, the majority of, if not practically all, these illnesses went undiagnosed. Something I am grateful for is when I began working with Tony J. Selimi, that I experienced an unconventional healing transformation process he uses to assist clients in improving their physical, mental and emotional health. From the first session, I committed to the hugely intense work to heal all these conditions and became aware of the root cause of the illnesses for the first time. And in truth, as mentioned, I'm genuinely grateful because if I'd known of these approx 40 illnesses in the previous decades before meeting Tony, for sure I know I wouldn't be here and that I would have taken my own life. as all this would have been too much to bear, let alone try to live with and through, even though remarkably I did live through it, whilst being blind to the quite unimaginable extensive extent of my poor mental health. But to move along and come back to you, the viewer, if you've gone through such an experience, through the years, perhaps like me, it's led you to develop many silent mantras that you repeat silently to yourself. Some of my own that may resonate with you used to be, you don't know what I'm going through. Why me? Why is this all happening to me? If I'm going through this, I'm saving someone else from all this suffering. This is it for me. This is my life. What have I done to deserve this? Perhaps I do deserve this, all of this. You just don't get it. You don't know what this is like. I can't take one more day of this. How do you explain this? Why can't I be the person that I was before all this started? Having spoken with many others who've been told that their mental health illnesses were incurable and chronic, many mentioned that it left them feeling like they're living with a life sentence over their head. And practically all said that they'd been told it was due to them suffering from a chemical impairment or imbalance, or had been attributed to a traumatic childhood, life experience, or was inherent within the family. Their mentioning of a life sentence resonated with the old me back before I met Tony, because the darkness I felt during those times led me to wish for another illness instead, such as cancer. Reason being that with that, at least you have a definitive yes or no to your condition, in that you'll either be cured or not, and in dying so would the suffering end. At least there'd be an end to the suffering in sight, one way or another. Something that you feel you don't have when suffering from chronic poor mental health. Such is the torment that you go through on a daily minute by minute basis, with no definitive end in sight, no yes or no, that this is where your thinking can lead you to wishing you could be suffering from another illness, anything at all that at least has a chance of cure. Through being told that your illnesses are incurable and chronic, I learned that it would leave you with feelings of no hope, and it could be that my previously mentioned mantras such as "this is it for me," "this is my life," is an accurate description of how you feel about your current situation. You may even feel that you'll have to hide this forever, or you could have opened up about it and been treated with disdain for doing so, or not taken seriously, leading you to feel you have no option but to return to suffering in silence. Chronic diagnosis is so devastating that it often contributes to feelings that you'll never be in a relationship with someone you love, or that you'll ever be able to have children, because who's going to want you with your chronic illness? Especially if you feel you'll be a burden to another within that relationship. All of this I also know personally. After all, this was once my case because I once lived this way, believing all of this to be absolutely true for over 20 years. Living with an everyday belief that you'll never be a father, that you'll never hear someone call you dad, that you'll never take your children to the park to watch them play, can break you beyond all measure. And perhaps this has given you an idea of the long-lasting effects years after hearing the word chronic. But what if your life doesn't have to be like this? By reading A Path to Wisdom, #Loneliness, The Unfakeable Code and A Path to Excellence, or by investing to work with Tony J. Selimi, you'll find an expert who can restore beyond all measures all your hope and take you far beyond hope. After discovering how ill I was, I asked Tony if this could be healed or cured. And when he responded yes back in 2015, he planted a seed in my mind. At first I was sceptical, but with every session I started to question the beliefs that told me I would never heal, and that I most likely would commit suicide. Today, 8 years later, many of my conditions are a thing of the past. I no longer take medication and turn to drugs or alcohol when the tough gets going. Instead, I use Tony's principles in these books to mindfully navigate change and uncertainty. Living this way today is incredible and priceless, and you can achieve the same. And imagine how in doing so, how much your life would change for the better, what you'd be achieving. Because through your commitment and in doing the work, you through time will be able, like me, to see that chronic becomes just a word of your past, not a life sentence of your present and future. And there'll come a day when others will wish you well in your recovery, and for it to not even resonate with you because you'll go far beyond the state of recovery, which is such an incredible feeling. Why? Because you'll recognise that you're no longer trying to manage your once chronic illnesses, because for you, they'll no longer exist, because Tony creates unimaginable results for all his clients and priceless breakthroughs. Such is where you see with crystal clear clarity that your illnesses are no longer present within your mind. And how do you recognise this? Well, it'll come the day when you realise everything you went through, that you've begun talking of it in the past tense, as is now my case. Is this improbable, impossible? Not at all. This entire video is living proof of it being so. Lastly though, what if, like me, all you've ever wanted to be is the person you were before your illness? What if ever since that day, and it could have been 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, all you've ever wanted to be is the living person you were before becoming ill? Maybe that sounds far-fetched, sounds like a dream, even a miracle. Well, that dream, that miracle can happen for you. As it has for me, because every day now I live my life this way, as that person. But still I'd say as a better person than the one I was before becoming supposedly chronically ill for the rest of my natural life, age 17. So if you've been led to believe that your illnesses are chronic and that recovery is the best you can hope for, I hope this video has sparked a curiosity about whether this is the truth. And do please share with someone whom you believe or know will benefit. Or if you'd like to contact Tony to begin your own healing journey, you can do so by emailing his PA Alma at info@tonyselimi.com. And thank you for watching.